I want to know who's excited about the last of the last of the last video classes with me. I am. If you're not, I am. And I think we both are. It's fun to be in class with you, but to record these videos and save them and convert them and upload them and to do so at about midnight every night isn't always a lot of fun. I know it's not fun for you either, just to sit and watch a video instead of having a good time with your classmates in our classroom setting. But we made the most of it, haven't we, guys? This is the last of the last of the last videos with me. Now, this isn't the last of the last of the last of your work. Remember, we're doing our test review for Chapter 7 on radicals today. You will be taking your tests on Wednesday and Thursday. I'm giving you 2 class periods for that. Make sure you take your time, do your best on that you can. Get those to me by the end of math period on Thursday, okay? Make sure you get your test turned in to me. We're having still some trouble with not as much Algebra 1, but with some other classes we're still having some troubles. Make sure that those get into me. And outside of that, guys, you have a final, a math final that we discussed yesterday in English class. Remember, there's the English part of the final, and then there's, which is over 3 weeks, including this week. And then there's the math final, which is just over 2 weeks, which starts on Monday. And so make sure to get that done. It's not a big assignment. I don't know that I'd say it's fun, but at least it's not numbers and variables that you're using to try to solve problems. So it's just a creative writing assignment. And I just want you to give me some heart vomit that is put in a grammatically beautiful way. And I'm going to be very content about that. So what we're doing is Math Test Chapter 11 review. I don't have space to put, like before, all of it on a board just once, and so I am going to pause the video partway through and I'll put on numbers 13 through 25, but we're going to do numbers 1 through 12 right now. I don't anticipate that it's going to take an extremely long time for us to do. It's not really that difficult, not exactly a simple test, but not the hardest test that you've taken by any means either. So let's look at number 1. The instructions, by the way, for numbers 1 through 9, the whole first page, are to simplify, simply to simplify. If the expression is not a real number, state, quote, not real, unquote. Assume that variables in the radicand, okay, and that's the terminology under the square root symbol, are non-negative. Assume that the variables in the radicand are non-negative. And what I want to do with this is something similar that I did with you guys in your with the last test that you took. I just want to go through and tell you, especially on 1 through 12, like what your answer will look if it is correct. And that way, if you don't get an answer that looks like what I'm about to tell you, then you'll know that you need to go back and you need to look at that and rework it again if you want to get it correct. Okay? So, number 1, what is the square root of 25? Oh man, why don't I just throw you a softball right off the bat? That's a good one. Obviously, that's just going to be a number, meaning there's no square root symbol that's left in the end. It's just a flat out number, period. Number 2 is going to be a number, then a cube root symbol, and just a number underneath that cube root symbol. So it's going to be as your final answer, some number out here understood multiplied to the cube root of some number on the inside, if it's a correct answer. Number 3, that's unique. Why did I tell you things like that? I will say no more about number 3. Number 4. You're going to have a term on the outside. Okay, hint, hint. Notice I didn't say simply a number. I said you're going to have a term on the outside, and use that hint throughout whenever you find the word term, as opposed to simply the number sign meaning a number. There will be a term times the square root of some term also. So that's number 4. On number 5, you're going to have just a term and that's it, meaning there's no square root symbol that'll be left. Everything will simplify to the point that you don't need a square root symbol any longer on number 5 if you've done it correctly. Number 6, there will be the square root of a term on top. Number 6 will be a fraction answer. There will be the square root of a term on top, and on bottom there's only going to be a number for the denominator. Only a number will be on the denominator, and that is for number 6. For number 7, your final answer is going to be a number minus some number multiplied to the square root of some term. Okay, so a number minus a number times the square root of a term all over a number. And that's for number 7. On numero ocho, you will end up as an answer some term on number 8, some term times the square root of a number as the radicand, minus a term times the square root of also just some number. Now listen to me, guys. All these things I'm telling you, I think you're smart enough to know anyway, and to know how we've done things for a little bit now in our new arrangement. But I want you to remember, just like before, I want you to write all these things down. And I don't care if you write them on your test itself. If that's helpful to you, just write it straight on the test. I'm content. If you would rather have it on a separate piece of paper that you use as a portion of your notes, remember you can use your notes to take your test. You can use your graded quizzes if you've turned them in to take your test. And there are unlimited corrections on those quizzes to help not only your grade, but also to help you out as you take that test, if you've turned them in to me and had them corrected. But if they all come into me at the very end and you don't have them to help you out as far as graded and corrected, they won't be as much of a help. But in the same way, I want you to write this down either on your notes or on a separate piece of paper, that is, or on your test itself. So let these help you. Okay, so where are we? Number 8 is what we just did, isn't it? A term times, the answer will be a term times the square root of a number minus a term also times the square root of a number. Number 9 is going to simplify just to a term. There will be no square rooting. There's no square rootage, let's call it. I like that one better. Numbers 10 through 12. I'm going to give a little less hints on these. I will help you get started though, and all this is pretty much going to be the same. On number 10, to get started, what you need to do is square both sides to get rid of the square root on the left. Square both sides to get rid of the square root on the left. Number 12 is just a hair different. The first thing you need to do is subtract 7. Okay, subtract 7 to get rid of it to go to the other side. The second thing that you need to do on number 12 is divide both sides by 3. Divide both sides by 3. And then you're left with only a square root of something on one side equals something else. Then you square. In the third step, you square both sides to get rid of the square root. So you don't do it immediately. You undo everything else first until all that's left is terminology that the square root's being taken of it, and then square both sides. Okay, so for numbers 10 through 12, does that help? I hope so, because that's half doing the problems for you, and that ought to definitely be an aid. Numbers 10 through 12, with every one, you'll either end up only with a number. That's it. Okay, there's no square roots, no cubed roots, nothing like that in the end. Each one is only going to be a number for 10 through 12, or the answer will be no solution. And the reason something would be no solution is if your answer wouldn't check out. Okay? Now that's one way of looking at it. There's actually another way, but that's going to be one of those strong hints that I give you. And I'll give you this hint further, that only one of those 3 will be a no solution. Okay, that's in numbers 10 through 12. And remember, after you get done, you can plug the answer back into the equation and work out the original equation to test to see whether it really does equal that, x that is. Okay, so that's numbers 1 through 12. I'm going to pause, erase, put more info on the board. And we will also quickly go through numbers 13 through 25, and then that'll be it. And you guys will be off to the races for your test over the next 2 days. Here we are, leg 2 of finality. So let's get to it. On numbers 13 and 14 of our chapter 11 test review, what you're going to be doing is using the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, for both of those. Of course, that is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And you're given the values of each. I did mention the hypotenuse, or c, is always the longest because it squared is a and b, each of those squared and added together. So c, or the hypotenuse, which is the diagonal line. Remember, a and b are always they always form the 90-degree angle, and then the diagonal line that's longer that connects the two is always the hypotenuse. See, you're really not going to need that piece of information right there. I know you have it in your notes anyway, but it might be something just for you guys moving forward and not so much for the remainder of this year. But the hypotenuse C, because of the makeup of that formula, is always the longest. And so that one's not really too difficult. I will say for A and B, even though it involves some square roots, whenever it's all said and done, and a lot of that has to do with the squaring that you'll do, there will be just a single number, okay? There will be a number answer, no square root left. For number 13, a single whole number also, no square root left on number 14. Okay, 15 really is just pretty simple. Number 15 is find the distance between 2 points, x value and y value. 5 and 2, and -3 and 4. You guys remember the distance formula? Just plug in, just first things first, label your x values and then label your y values as ordered pairs. You know how that works by now. And your distance formula is d equals the square root of open parentheses. That's not x squared, by the way. That's the second x value. That's just an identifying characteristic, and it doesn't mean squared any more than that means x to the first power. That's just your second x that you're given in the ordered pairs, and that's the first x that you're given in the ordered pairs. So distance equals square root of open parentheses, the second x value minus the first x value. Simplify that, then square it. Now that does mean square, the superscript, the upper number on the top right, plus your second open parentheses, your second y value minus your first y value, close parentheses, squared. And whenever you do that, you will have a term that has a number in front and then times, understood, the square root of a number underneath. Or if you want, guys, I don't mind, and remember, you can use your calculators on this, okay, I'm okay with that. Now on this one, I don't mind that if you go ahead and give me a decimal answer for number 15. You can give me a decimal answer and I'll be okay with that one. Now the front page, don't try that, okay? You can use your calculator, but if you give me decimal answers on the front page, I will mark it wrong. Because I've already told you that they need to be written in standard form, which is an unsolvable square root of a number that cannot be broken down further. No perfect squares left in it. Number 16, I've said about that, duh. You guys don't need any help with number 16. Mentally estimate the square root of 150 to the nearest integer. I will say, okay, I'll give you some help, but I don't need to write anything out. I will say about that, what's the nearest perfect square below 150? And what's the nearest perfect square above 150? And then take the square root of each one of those perfect squares, one below, one above, and then that's going to help you to estimate to which of those two numbers the square root of 150 is closer. Number 17. Find the midpoint of these 2 points. An x value of 8, a y value of -3, another x value of 2, and another y value of 9. How do you do that? Recall the formula for a midpoint, or for midpoint. It is m equals, and in parentheses, the second x value plus the first x value divided by 2. So all you're doing is finding an average, adding two numbers together and averaging them. Okay, that's what that means. Comma, or in other words, the answer is going to be an ordered pair. You're going to have one answer for x right here, and then you're going to have a comma, and you're going to take the second y value, add it to your first y value, divide that by 2, and that will be your simplified y value. An x value in parentheses, comma, a y value in parentheses, and that's going to tell you what the midpoint of those two segments of a right triangle is. Number 18, what is the domain of f of x equals the square root of x plus 3 plus 4? Now, you guys remember how you do this? I've said simple, because it is that. Everything that's under the square root, set it equal to or greater than 0, because as a rule, whatever is found underneath the square root symbol has to be at least 0 or greater. And we did talk about in last class there is one exception to that, but don't worry about that exception right now. And then just solve. What is x equal? I mean, that's one of the easiest problems you had in Algebra 1 so far. Number 19, write a function rule that reflects the graph of f of x equals square root x across the y-axis and then translates the graph 5 units up. Okay, I'll be the first to tell you, as is often the case, this is worded in a really confusing way, but is a really simple question. They're not really a question, but an equation or problem, maybe better. All it is, guys, it's saying basically what's the opposite of f of x equals the square root of x? Well, that's easy. That's f of x equals the negative, or the square root of negative x. And so that's that. However, so that's going to be half your answer right there. Because it's confusing, I wanted to help get you started on the right foot on that one. But it goes on to say this, and then it translates the graph 5 units up. Okay, hint, hint. Outside of the parentheses, you're going to do something with that last piece of information. How would you reflect an upward y movement of 5 separated from the square root symbol and anything that's underneath it and that comes to the right of it? How would you do that? And here's something that'll be an aid to you, I believe. But guys, it's just like the y-intercept of the linear equations. If you move up 5 in a linear equation, okay, and you get away from that x value, how do you express y movement? Okay, when it's 5 units up, show me how you do that. Attach something to the end of this equation right here, and you're in good shape. So that's 19. Number 20. Convert the cubed root of 27x squared y to exponential form. And the way that you do that is you get it moved out from under the cubed root, so there is no cubed root left. And what I want you to do on that one, guys, is look back on your notes. Okay, if you're following, and you probably will be, because that was, I believe, a new concept. It was fun and it wasn't overly complicated, but again, it was a new concept. So look back at your notes, and whenever you follow what you were taught and you look at those examples and you look at your quizzes, if you've done them, turned them in, and gotten them corrected, excuse me, that's something that's going to help you a lot, because you're going to end up as your answer with a term and a fraction as an exponent. Okay, that's the exponent raised there as a fraction. So a term with a fractioned exponent, understood, multiplied to a term with yet another fraction exponent. And those fractioned exponents will be different from one another. Number 21, convert 5 1/4 as an exponent times x as an exponent 1/2 to radical form, which means you're going to take and to move those underneath some kind of root symbol. What will that common root be between the two? And then the combination of that term is also going to be raised to a power underneath the square, or I'm sorry, not the square root, but underneath some sort of root here, but it's also going to have an exponent. Again, I would tell you for that one, guys, look back at your notes, okay? And I would love to go through with these, go through each one of these like we do a lot of, and many times we have all the problems on a test because the tests are pretty hard, but as I told you, I just can't do that in this format because I can't stop someone going back and just, you know, looking at it and just copying down all the work and the answers just straight from the video. So, so you're going to have to work a little bit, but the benefit is, I'm telling you, the layout of almost every answer on your test, even though you still have to do the work to find it, it's just those are helpful hints to get you from point A to point B. And also, you guys, if you took good notes and if you turned in your quizzes and you got them graded and corrected, it's really a huge benefit. So make sure that you've done those things and you'll be okay. So that's 21. Number 22. The instantaneous velocity of a free-falling object. We had physics for Bible time. Let's have a little more physics for math as we finish up. Free-falling object, the instantaneous velocity, can be calculated using the formula V, or velocity equals the square root of 2 times g times d, where g is the gravitational acceleration of 32 feet per second squared, and d is the distance the object has traveled in feet. Find the velocity of a boy who hits the ground after he jumps from a 16-foot roof. Okay? Guys, this is really easy. Your formula is V equals the square root of 2 times g times d. You're trying to find velocity. Well, you're given g as the gravitational acceleration, so just plug in your 32 for that variable. And then d you are given as 16 feet. And so all you have to do is plug that in. Do the math, take the square root of all of that, simplify. You can use your calculator, and you should be coming up with a completely correct, wonderful, true answer. Number 24. Graph f of x equals the square root of x plus 4 minus 3. Okay? I'm sorry, I skipped a problem, didn't I? Let's go back to number 23. As I stated, number 22 is easy. Number 23, there we go, my bad. A 50-foot ladder needs to reach a building 20 feet away. How high up the building to the nearest tenth of a foot will it reach? Okay, and I wanted to really point you in the right way on this one. You're using the Pythagorean theorem again. Okay, it's a ladder and it's going to be slanted whenever it comes to rest. And so that's going to be the C, the slant. Okay, you got a 90-degree angle like that, okay? But you're also going to have a ladder that's slanted, and that's the slant or the hypotenuse. And so the 50 number is going to be your C, and don't forget to square it. And the 20 would work for either one. Let's just say it's B. And so don't forget to square that. And then you're just going to solve from that point. And don't forget, in the end, you're going to have to take the square root of both sides to get the correct answer. Number 24. That's where I started a moment ago. Graph f of x equals the square root of x plus 4 minus 3. I would say look at those previous class notes. It was just yesterday, right, that we were doing those. So just look back at those notes, and that ought to be fresh enough that you guys can use just a carbon copy example from what it was that we dissected yesterday. Okay, and then lastly, number 25. We had a quiz, or a question like this very one on our quiz. Do you recall that one? Are 2, 5, that's 1 point, 5, 9, that's the second point, and 9, 3, the vertices of a right triangle, show all of your work. Remember, a right triangle, as we just discussed, is going to be 90 degrees, 2 of the lines, and then the third line is going to connect those 2 lines. So a right triangle has 2 lines that look like this, and then has a third line that connects as a slant to them. And I mentioned to some of you who asked me about that one on your homework, and one of you even kind of, we even went through and graphed it together. Just graph it is all you need to do. plot the 3 points. Make yourself a chart, okay, with an X and a Y axis. Just plot the 3 points, and then I say preschool it, boys and girls. And what I mean by that is just connect your dots. And once you do that, you'll be able to tell as you turn your paper around, and it might not be perfectly to scale, but is there a 90-degree angle and then a line that connects those 90-degree angles? And if yes, they are the vertices of a right triangle. And if no, then obviously they're not the vertices of a right triangle. So you tell me which is the answer between the two. All right, guys, what do you think? Any questions? I wish I could take those questions if you did have them. Actually, I can take those questions. Feel free to message me, text me, call me, Facebook Messenger me, whatever it is, FaceTime. Whatever's easiest for you, whatever questions you have, dudes and dudettes, we'll go through it and we'll get it figured out. But remember, this is the last of all of our video classes together. You still have your test that you're taking tomorrow and Thursday. Plenty of time to get it done. Take your time. Make sure you do well. Also ensure that you turn that test into me on Thursday or by Thursday at the latest. You can Wednesday if you're completely done and content with your answers. But at the latest, turn those into me on Thursday. The last 2 weeks of class, you have your math final that we discussed yesterday in English. And make sure that you get that done and get that turned into me, because that's going to be at least the value of a test grade. I might make it even more than that, maybe more like a couple of test grades. So make sure that you get that into me. Guys, I mentioned the pre-algebra. That's it as far as maybe our interaction for the rest of the year. In all seriousness, I know we joke around a lot. We've had a good time. I hope you feel the same way. But, man, I've had a blast with you guys. It has been awesome. It has been a real privilege to be a facilitator to help you in your learning. We have some real shining stars in our class. But I'm proud of every single one of you for the hard work that you have put in. Your grades show it. I believe it was my best class, Algebra 1, as far as academics are concerned, and that is a mondo testament to you guys. But really, I love you. I appreciate you. I am proud of you. We'll see what next year holds. I don't, whether I'll be teaching there, whether you'll be a student at TCCS. If at all possible, I hope both of those things work out. I also know for some of you that won't be the case. But it's been a great year. I'll never forget the good times and the memories that we've made together. Okay, guys. Well, I will let you run. And I'm sure we'll be talking probably somewhere along the way, maybe even prior to our moving ahead ceremony. But you guys have an awesome summer. And again, I just want you to know, regardless of our future times, it's been a real privilege and a lot of fun this year. Adios, and have some fun in the sun, yos. See ya.